We begin here at home as President Bola Tinubu yesterday said although the North could not progress in isolation, Nigeria too could not prosper unless every part of her thrived. Alluding to the vision of the former Sardauna of Sokoto, the late Sir Ahmadu Bello, Tinubu said the nation's major challenge remained engineering a transition towards a federation defined by order, stability and safety, adding that the task was both urgent and achievable. Speaking at a stakeholders roundtable on Northern Youth Development organized by the Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation in Abuja, the president unveiled a comprehensive youth development strategy spanning multiple key sectors like tech, agric and the creative sectors to drive the nation's economic transformation. Represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, Tinubu invoked the legacy of the late Sardauna of Sokoto and former Premier of Northern Nigeria. Specifically addressing the northern region's security challenges, Tinubu outlined measures to restore stability to the north, including strengthening community policing, rehabilitating displaced persons, and addressing cross-border challenges like smuggling and insurgency. Well, the conversation around development in the north continues. Rufai, your take on this outing?
So, I'm happy that, we've talked about this. The north cannot grow in isolation. Also, other parts of Nigeria cannot grow in isolation. We must all grow together. And that's against the grain of how Nigeria was initially structured. So I'll take you back to 1951, when there was the John McPherson Constitution, the McPherson Constitution that talked about regions. So it was a balancing act between the regions and the central government, which was all about the regions getting more autonomy. There are tales about how Awolowo went back constantly to tweak the civil service in that constitution. And that was pretty much what we ran, even when we had the elections that led to independence in 1959, until the coup happened. And after the coup happened, Aguiyi-Ironsi touted a unitary government where you had everybody coming together. It was always about across regional blocks. A lot of people have said for Nigeria to grow, let's go back to that regional system, or that's what people call, devolution of powers and all of that. But also, since the constitution of the 70s, that 79 constitution that talks about, a more federating unit, a federal unit, everybody coming together and being part of the pie. Yeah, you've had that back and forth. A lot of people believe, it should be according to my region first. The region that produced the golden goose and all of that. You can see the current fight going on taxation. Some areas that are producing more should be able to get more than the others. And that's why I'm happy about a speech like this. Anyway, it was made, at a memorial lecture in honor of the Sultan of Sokoto, and it was said that we must all grow together. And how do we grow together? Collective development across board. The government said they've been doing a lot of projects, skill up the youths and everything, the youth artisan skill program, development programs and things like that. But the question is, in doing all of that, what's the cost-benefit ratio? And is it skewed in such a way that all regions get a chance to benefit and feel the sense of inclusiveness? The other point I want to make is the part of leadership. For every region to be integrated in growth, there must be great leadership across board. So it's not only the central leadership now. What are the governors doing in those regions? How are we able to bring about productivity and all of that? Go and check the internally generated revenue. You will see where there's a big slant and disconnect. Go and check the primary school adoption rate. Out of the millions of out-of-school children, it still slants towards certain regions more than the other region. So for us to have inclusive development, we must have a holistic level of thinking as against the regional way we used to think before. That has always been the great Nigeria since the 51 McPherson Constitution up to the 60s. It was after the coup that dynamics they changed. And even when we now had the 79 Constitution that talked about more cohesive region or more cohesive federating units.
Okay. What is the substance of the submission of President Tinubu presented on his behalf by the Vice President Kashim Shettima at the Northern Youth Development Forum organized by the Sir Ahmadu Bello Foundation? Simply, he was saying that Nigeria must be a federation that should be defined by order, stability, safety, and in other words, a federation in which all the constituent parts can feel safe. Because no region can develop at the expense of the other regions. And he was quoting the vision of Sir Ahmadu Bello. Sir Ahmadu Bello was the Sardauna of Sokoto. he was the premier of the North. He was in a pole position to become the Sultan of Sokoto, but he chose to defend his people within the Nigerian Foundation. He was involved in the constitutional conferences, and he did a lot for the people of the North at a time when in this country, you had leaders, Nnamdi Azikiwe from the east, Obafemi Awolowo from the west, and the Sardauna from the northern part of Nigeria. And each person, in his own way, tried for his own people. What they envisioned, what Tinubu is asking for now, was a federation. Sustained, Nigeria became a federal republic in 1963. Now, are we running a federation? The same federation that President Tinubu is asking for. It's not enough to just throw these races around. If President Tinubu says, oh, we should become a federation defined by order, stability, and safety, do all Nigerians feel safe in this federation? The people of the East, they say they are marginalized. Even Northerners are now saying they are marginalized. The same people who have occupied the commanding heights of this politics and economy better for more years than other people. Okay, there was a point that even Yoruba people were saying we feel marginalized in this equation. I have not heard of Oduduwa Republic for some months now. So Yoruba people are no longer marginalized. So there is a question about whether we are running a federal system in which the constituent parts can feel a sense of belonging. President Tinubu, through Senator Kashima, also used that occasion to talk about what he's doing for the youths, how the youths are the hope of the future. It is true. The administration has a number of programs focusing on the youths. The administration has expressed its commitment to talk to the youth. Because by 2050, Nigeria will be the third most populous nation on the world. And 3/4 of that population in Nigeria will be young people. So we have to invest in the future of Nigerians. However, for me, the most important point was not about the self-promotion that the Tinubu administration tried at that event. It is about the point made by the Sultan of Sokoto. The Sultan of Sokoto made the point about education. This focus on youths. You cannot get it off the ground if you do not educate the people. A country that has over 15 million children out of school. And I think that the big takeaway from that event should be the point made by the Sultan about the fact that we need to educate these children. In 1955, the Western region introduced free universal education, Awolowo, and that jump-started the Southwest. In 1958, Ukpabi Asika led the Igbos to talk about education. The Northerners had their first conference on education in 1959. Where are they today? If you don't educate these people who will constitute 3/4 of the population in 2050, Nigeria will be far behind. That is the point.
Absolutely, Dr. Abati and Rufai. I think you've summarized the speech that was delivered in a great way. And for me, it was consistent with the messaging that we have seen from the president throughout this year. I remember earlier in the year, he was speaking at the Northwest Peace and Security Summit. And what he spoke about there with regards to addressing insecurity and bringing prosperity and stability to the northern region of the country was that he was saying that there are some historical injustices that need to be addressed. And that's a very accurate point. In that submission that he made earlier in the year, he spoke about the amalgamation. And the honest truth is that Nigeria has been pressing forward despite this marriage of convenience that was put together by the imperialists in 1914. It created a union that intentionally was supposed to create a structure that divides to conquer. But yet here we are with a united purpose to push forward and to make it work. So it's great to see when these types of dialogues are happening. But beyond the dialogue, I do hope that this rhetoric can now translate into tangible policies and tangible development on the ground, because the situation currently is dire. When you look at Nigeria in its entirety, Budget reported last month that only two states in Nigeria can survive without FAC. The remainder of the states need at least a minimum of 55% of their budgets supported by FAC every month. What does this mean? This means that the entire nation is depending on oil allocation. Apart from that, you now look at the recent creation of development commissions. Each region now has its own development commission. However, at the end of the day, we've now seen a submission for a massive over 40 trillion naira budget for the year 2025. And one of the rationales for the massive budget was the fact that these development commissions need to be funded. But what funds the budget? Ultimately, our budget still depends on oil and borrowing. So it comes down, we're going around in circles and not necessarily hitting the nail on the head. Now, when you look at the North, 19 states that make up the North contribute about 23% to Nigeria's GDP. But when you go back in history, you look at the textile boom, the industry boom, the agricultural boom, you look at the massive potential that exists in the North. So as much as I fully support the fact that some new youth initiatives need to be created, I also think that it would be a fantastic idea to go back to the drawing board and look at those industries that have always worked and that are known to work in that region. There's such a thing called strategic advantage. You look at the mining sector that we talk about daily here, and we know that the North is rich in several minerals. And if one can go into some sort of a artisanal training program that can get these people involved in the mining, not just on the surface mining, but with regards to bringing in companies that can do this in a mechanized way, in an organized way, then the route to the North's prosperity is very clear and obvious. Prosperity is not dependent on having a port. There are so many landlocked countries across the world that have made great use of their competitive advantage and their strategic advantages to be able to develop and to become prosperous regions. So all in all, fantastic conversation. And we do hope that beyond conversation, that this can now translate into tangible action and development and policy that we can see on the GDP, on the spreadsheets of Nigeria's balance sheets every year.